Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Today on Farm Connections, we travel to Seacap Orchard in Rochester, Minnesota to learn about how bees help agriculture and food production. And with me is our special guest, Chris Schad. Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I noticed this product of honey, and you're all about honey. Tell us about your company and what you do.
So we are the Bee Shed. We're located out of Rochester. We produce honey. We run about 50 colonies of bees around the Rochester area. We also manufacture beekeeping equipment and sell that to local beekeepers. And we do a lot of community education. We do probably 30 to 40 presentations a year about honeybees and pollinators and forage support and pesticides and things like that.
Why are bees important to ag production and food supply?
So honeybees are responsible for about 30% of all the food we eat, those pollination services. So it's the fruits, a lot of the vegetables, even coffee. So yeah, coffee. I know, coffee. So it's really important that we support pollinators in general, and for me, honeybees specifically.
Well, behind us are apple trees, and tell us about the pollination process and how bees might help us pollinate our apple trees.
Well, bees are after the pollen and the nectar, and along the way, they do the pollination for the orchard, or for the apples. And so it's kind of a win-win for the apple tree and for the bee. They both get what they want out of the whole process.
What kind of environment makes a bee and a beekeeper happy?
Lots of flowers. And so I like what I see here around Fred's trees here, because I see a lot of dandelions along with the blooms. A lot of orchards will, and obviously not this one, which is good to see, a lot of orchards, they'll trim away all of the competing forage, the competing flowers, so that the bees will only go to the apples or the blueberries or whatever crop it might be that they're pollinating. This one here, though, I see a lot of dandelions. We like dandelions. Dandelions are an important early season food for bees. And so when I see a yard full of dandelions, I kind of do a little happy dance.
You talked a little bit earlier about some research studies that were done regarding perimeters of orchards, and can you share that again?
So there was a study done just a handful of years ago at Michigan State University, and as I mentioned earlier, a lot of orchards, they'll trim away all of the forage that would be competing for the bees' attention. And so they trim away all of that and make it so that only the bees will only have the blueberries to go to, or the apples to go to, or whatever it might be. What they did in this study is they actually invested in wildflowers around the perimeters of blueberry orchards, and that costs time and that costs money, and that's a barrier to doing that normally. What they found, though, is that by having more wildflowers around the blueberry orchards, they had more blueberries that were bigger, and they had more bees, and that's why they had more blueberries that were bigger. And as a consequence, after 4 years, the increased production in the blueberries was enough to pay for the seeding that they did around the farm. So that's a pretty cool study from a beekeeper's perspective, because that's encouraging the planting of wildflowers. And now they're replicating that study in other places, and they're doing that in more orchards around the country.
Chris, are there different kinds of bees?
There are. The honeybee that everybody seems to like, and I particularly like, that actually comes from Europe and Asia, and they're not native to North America. There's like 6 species of honeybees, but native to North America, there's more than 20,000 different species of bees. Some of them are solitary bees, they're bumblebees, they're mason bees, and there are actually far more of those out there in the wild than there are of honeybees. They're just kind of off doing their own thing, and you don't see them very frequently, other than maybe the bumblebees. But it's the honeybee that's gotten a lot of attention around the country, of course.
Well, Chris, thanks again for the sweet food you produce and sharing your knowledge.
Pleasure. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for joining us on Farm Connections.